Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
I'm going to do just like I did with the last guy. We had Luke's Wing on just a second ago to talk about what they do, getting veterans and active duty injured vets flown home for the holidays. Now I want to remind folks to get active and call a vet. So give them your mission statement on why you founded this organization and what you do on the daily basis.
Thanks, Dan. In raising public awareness, you threw the number 30,000 out there, and that's the Google number. But really the number's somewhere between 133,000, which is the VA number. Right. 130,000.
That's disgusting.
Or over 300,000. So that's the raise awareness piece. How can we prevent veteran suicide? Listen up, everybody. I need you to be an educated base of support for the veterans in your lives. Too many times we see people who have lost their veteran, and what they say is almost always the same. We didn't see it coming.
Right.
So here's an idea. Go to checkavet.org and get the tools so that you can see it coming.
Aha. Yeah, they missed the warning signs, right? Because they're subtle, right? I've got buddies. I wasn't in combat like you and others, but I got buddies that were after I got out 30 years ago. And I've had a beer at the bar with them, and they seem totally normal, and all of a sudden, they'll give you a kink in the armor and show you they're hurting. You know, and it could be one word or just their eye movement or looking away or just something, a tremble, a quiver in their lip voice. You can tell they're hurting, and you got to reach out when you see that moment. Michael, what do you need from us, from my viewers, from our fellow Americans, from our fellow veterans that don't have PTSD, that are doing well? How can we help those vets that are in crisis? What do you need from us right now, today, tomorrow, and a week from now?
What Checkavet needs is the resources to do more, Dan.
Yes.
I can't do anything about the 44 that we lost yesterday. But if you look at resources as a volume knob on our mission, we need America to grab a hold of the knob and turn it up. We need your donation so that we can actually have something to do about the 44 we're going to lose tomorrow. Oh. So that's what we need. But one, if you're watching this program, you need to be a routine and meaningful part in the veterans' lives that you have. Routine and meaningful. Like, get involved. Be there with them. Do things.
Michael Carmichael. The organization is called Checkavet. The website is checkavet.org. Send him a message. Send him some cash. Volunteer to help. Get on the phone. I guarantee you got a veteran that probably lives next door or up the street. Check on them on the daily, not once a year, all the time, to make sure they don't commit that heinous act, because we didn't reach out to help them. It's a last resort. Nobody wants to do it, but they're struggling, and we can help them. Again, it's Checkavet, Michael Carmichael. God bless you for everything you do, brother. You have a great holiday season.
God bless you, Dan. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Veteran suicide. You're not alone, and we can end it. I guarantee you, we can end it. Welcome back to Truth Thursday. The Rob Maness Show is live on Worldview Tube, our X Spaces simulcast, Rumble now, YouTube, still, Truth Social Plus, and Roku. Well, America's veterans have traveled many tough and dangerous paths in our service to our country. We as a community have struggled for many years to end the tragedy of 22-a-day suicides with very little impact on that number. And as you just heard, it's believed to be an alarming surge, upwards to as many as 44 veteran suicides a day now. That video you just saw from Checkavet was just within the last few weeks. So we do, however, have individual successes, and maybe that's the answer. There is no common solution that can be applied to everybody, but we have to create millions of individual solutions. That's why you see veterans starting groups like the one highlighted in my opening there, Check-A-Vet, checkavet.org, helping one veteran at a time and teaching us how to help the veterans that are in our lives. All of America is pulling for us. And now President Trump is back, and he's moving veteran suicide to the top of his priority list again. We all look forward to seeing the new Secretary of Veterans Affairs, former Congressman Doug Collins, who's also a chaplain colonel and a former Navy veteran, wade into this challenge immediately. My guest today is author and retired U.S. Army Staff Sergeant Robert J. Quayle III. Robert has a unique background as he served in the Army twice, from 1983 to 1992, and again at age 43, when the economy collapsed from 2008 to 2013. Following his first enlistment, he began a career in finance and banking, working a lot of positions such as insurance agent, branch manager, business banking officer, loan officer, and financial advisor. Well, Robert found himself on a dark trail that nearly led to his own suicide, but was thankfully able to avert the tragedy. One of the positive results of his recovery is his book titled Bobby, There's Always a Light at the End of the Tunnel, written with the hope of preventing at least one suicide. Robert, welcome to the Rob Maness Show. Thanks for coming on to talk about your book. We're going to show 3 more clips during the show, and they'll be about the subject of veteran suicide. But my discussion with you, man, I want to work through this book because I read it. I read it. But it's your writing is very engaging. Your story is just absolutely compelling, and I want to give you the chance to tell your story. My first question is, what inspired you to actually write a book? I've been working on one for years.
Well, thank you, sir. I really appreciate the opportunity. It's funny how I came about the idea of writing the book. In retirement, I loved Cadillacs, and I wanted to get a new Cadillac. But having a couple of stepdaughters in college, which is very expensive, as I'm sure you know, I thought, well, if I want to get a new Cadillac, I better find a way to bring in some more money. So I decided to drive for Uber Black, their premium service here in the Cleveland area. It's called different things in different areas, but it's their premium service. It's meant to be like one step away from a limo ride. And I thought, well, what the heck? I want to get a Cadillac anyway. I might as well go ahead and get a black one like they require with the black leather interior and so on and so forth. And so I got the car and I started driving. And I'm a very outgoing person. I like to talk. And the passengers who didn't like to talk, I would just shut up. But the ones who liked to talk, I would tell them stories from my background. As your great introduction mentioned, quite a very interesting background. I have a whole bunch of stories that I love to tell. And when I would tell them to the passengers, the most common response that I would get from them is, dude, you should write a book. Or, wow, that would make a great book, or, stuff like that from all these passengers. And by the time I stopped driving, I had over 5,000 trips and a 5-star rating. And so I heard it a lot. And that's what but I kept thinking, I'm just an Army veteran. I'm retired. I hurt myself when I was in, and I'm just an average guy. What am I going to write about? Granted, I have a lot of cool stories, but I kept, it just, then it dawned on me one day, I was drinking coffee in the morning, watching TV, and it came on like a light bulb. I said, wow, I remember 10 years ago, I almost took my own life. And today I'm so glad that I didn't, because my life, if you compare it today to what it was 10 years ago, it's been completely upgraded in every way you can possibly imagine, from my house to my car, my bank account. I have one amazing dog. Now I have 2 amazing dogs. I mean, I could go on all day about all the upgrades of, to my life. And and I've always been a crazy lucky guy. I have a lot of stories about that too. So I thought it would make an interesting book. And from what I've been hearing, It did. It's been getting great reviews.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating. One of the things you do at the beginning of the book is you talk about your time growing up and then how you joined the Army the first time. Tell folks a little bit about that story, your growing up and what led you to join the United States Army originally.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll have to start a little bit further behind than high school, but I originally, when I grew up in Cleveland, and I was in advanced classes in the Cleveland school system, and then busing started, and my mother opted to move us to a suburb to avoid the whole busing thing. She didn't want us, being trucked clean across the state just to go to school every day. Anyhow, so when I got to the Berea school system, I was placed in quote unquote regular classes, and I quickly got bored and I started hanging out with the wrong crowd. And the guidance counselor got me and my mother into the school one day, and she looked right at my mother and said, your son needs to move on with his life. He's bored. I want to offer him a unique opportunity. And I had no idea what she was going to say. And she says, if you took a test that proved you know all the material for high school, would you want to graduate? And I said, can I take it right now? So anyway, long story short, they let me test out of high school at the age of 16 because I, quote unquote, needed to move on with my life. But I didn't really know at the time what I was going to do. I was 16 years old. I was thinking, wow, summer that never ends, right?
Right.
But I quickly got bored as well, and I was sitting around in my backyard with my friends. We were trying to figure out how we were going to make some money because we needed to take girls out and all that sort of thing that teenagers do. And we tossed around a bunch of ideas, and then the idea came to me that, hey, the county fair's coming to town. I'll bet you they could use some people there. So we walked a few miles to the fairgrounds, and we got a job that day helping build the bumper car rides and a roller coaster. And it was great work for teenagers in the summertime. I mean, we worked hard. We worked a good 12 hours that day, and we each made $40. We thought we were rich. Back then, it was great pay, especially for a teenager. But
yeah, for one day.
Yeah, and then we went back the next day. And we're walking around, and this guy out of nowhere points right at me, and he goes, "You looking for work, boy?" And I said, "Well, yes, I am." He had like two teeth in his mouth. I mean, the stereotypical carny, right? A very nice guy, though. He goes, "Come on over here. Let me show you how to work this here game." And it was one of those games where you have this. Like a fishing pole with a plastic ring on the end of the line, and you had to stand up a glass Coke bottle on a piece of wood, and there was a red circle on the wood, and you had to stand it up in the circle. And it wasn't impossible. It wasn't rigged so that you couldn't do it, but it was difficult. And he showed me the trick.
I failed in that many times.
Yeah. Well, he made me practice it all day, every day for like 3 days before the fair started. He goes, the easier you make it look, the more money you're going to make. And I said, okay. He goes, I'll pay you 25 cents on the dollar for every dollar you bring in. And I'm an outgoing person. I love to talk. So I was bringing the crowds in. I made $1,000 that week working that game. And that was really big money for especially back then. And the carney, he wanted me to travel with him. He was trying really hard to get me to travel with them because I brought in a lot of money for him. But, when you look back on your life, you see certain times when serendipity steps in, where things are supposed to happen. And this is one of those times where, my decision to go to the fairgrounds to find work those days literally changed my life because while I was working that game, these two beautiful girls went walking by and wearing Army uniforms. I mean, they were jaw-dropping beautiful. And I started talking to them, and they come over, and they're like, would you like some information about the Army? I'm like, you guys are in the Army? Sign me up. so yeah, so
well, we have to take a commercial break. We have to take a commercial break, Robert. When we come back, we'll continue this because I want to know what you did in the Army and then how you did this whole crazy transition to finance and then back to the Army at age 43. We'll be right back with author and retired U.S. Army Staff Sergeant Robert Quales III here on the Rob Maness Show.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. I want to thank you for all your support at wvwfoundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution, or go there and make an occasional contribution. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address there at wvwfoundation.com. You can also call and make your contribution over the phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652. Again, all these details are available at wvwfoundation.com. Thank you for your support as we try to help people around the world understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview.
I will once again make stopping veteran suicide a top priority of my administration. Terrible situation. I will ban the Department of Veterans Affairs from wasting a single cent to fund transgender surgeries or sex change procedures. Crazy.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Truth Thursday, and we're talking about veteran suicide today and we can end it, and what we ought to do and how we should approach the veterans in our lives. And we're speaking with author and retired U.S. Army Staff Sergeant Robert Quales III about his book, Bobby, There's Always a Light at the End of the Tunnel, which is about his own experience in life and his contemplation of suicide and how he has been able to recover and come out on the other side of that experience in a positive way and as an example for others. Robert, welcome back. You were talking about that you decided to join the Army because of two beautiful lady soldiers you met at the fairground. What was your job? Your first enlistment?
Yeah, so when I went into it turned out, I found out later, I met my recruiter at my first duty station in Germany. And he told me something I suspected. Those girls were not in the Army. They were college students that he had hired. But it was a very effective recruiting tool. And I apologize for my dog in the background. She hears the noise outside or something. But so, yeah, when my first enlistment was coming to an end, well, let me back up. I went in initially as a communications specialist. And when I arrived in Germany, I ended up through a whole series of events. Sorry about that. Through a whole series of events, I ended up in the colonel's office, the brigade commander's office. I guess I'd made an impression on him. And he says, listen, he goes, you're a prime candidate for a project that we have going on. He goes, how you feel about switching jobs to become an intelligence analyst? And I thought, wow, colonel's asking me to do something, I better say yes. So I said, yes, sir. And I ended up working in intelligence while I was on active duty. And it was counter intel work, going after East German agents that were trying to exploit our soldiers. That's a whole other story in and of itself. But then as I approached the end of the enlistment, I thought, well, what am I going to do now? If I re-enlist after 6 years, I might as well make it a career. But, you know, I'm only 23 years old. I want to see what I can do in the real world. So I decided to get out, but I joined the Ohio National Guard so I wouldn't burn any bridges. And that way, if things didn't work out as a civilian, it'd be real easy to go back on active duty. And my first job out of active duty was a security guard at a local mall. And I'll never forget the interview. The guy says, "What makes you think you could be a security guard at a mall?" I said, "Well, sir, I think if I can handle guarding a nuclear missile silo in Western Europe against terrorists, armed terrorists, I think I can handle a shopping mall." He said, "Okay, you're hired." So I ended up meeting, as part of that job, I ended up meeting an insurance agent who recruited me to get into selling life insurance. And because I was selling life insurance, I wound up becoming a banker. And that's how I got into banking. I worked in banking for 20 years. And I did everything on the retail side, from branch manager to business banking officer, as you mentioned, loan officer, financial advisor, and even an anti-money laundering specialist at one point. So I thought, well, if I lost my train of thought there. Okay. Okay. The banking ended in 2008 when the economy crashed.
Okay.
My bank shut down. I lost my job, and I didn't know what in the heck I was going to do. I was left with a choice of burning through my savings, or trying to find a new career, or, I didn't want to do that. So I thought, well, I'll go back in the Army. Everybody thought I'd lost my mind. You're 43 years old. You can't do that. Well, the more they said you can't do that, the more determined I became. So I put myself through basic training. I was going to the gym twice a day, 6 days a week, and I dropped 50 pounds in 2 months. And I got to where I could pass the physical fitness test with 100 score in every category, and for my age group. And so I got back in. I was an intelligence analyst again, and I ended up, it's a long, crazy story, but I ended up fracturing my spine, and I had to learn how to walk again. But the twist to that story is we didn't know my spine was fractured when the injury occurred. The symptoms didn't show up. Yeah, the symptoms didn't show up for 18 months. And I was going through 18 months worth of combat training, getting ready to go to Afghanistan, 25-mile ruck marches with 60 pounds on my back, and all the other physical training you go through with a fractured spine. And of course, I had tremendous back pain the whole time, but I just chalked it up to old man-itis. Here I am, a 43-year-old trying to keep up with guys in their 20s. It's no wonder I have back pain. So I just grunted through it. I kept going through it. And then one day I went on a run with my first sergeant and one of my soldiers, and my legs stopped working about halfway through the run. It was the strangest experience. I can't even describe it, really. My brain was telling my legs to run, and my legs were like, well, no, we're going to drag today. So that was the best I could do, was drag my feet. And my soldier wanted to carry me back over his shoulder. Something told me that was a bad idea. And as it turned out, they did an MRI. They found the fracture. My spine was fractured right by my heart at T7 and 8. If he had thrown me over his shoulder, bad things could have happened. So it's a good thing that he didn't do that. But he helped me get back. They found the fracture, and they had to do surgery. And the doctor told me, he was a colonel. He said, when you come out of the surgery, you may not be able to walk again. And I had a few choice words that I won't repeat on the podcast but I was under the influence of sedation already. And I very firmly told the colonel that I would in fact walk out of that hospital, but in not such a polite way. But he said, well, I hope you do. And that was the last thing I remember before going under. And it took 75 days, but I did walk out of that hospital. And I ended up, it took, and this is where, the events leading up to my suicide attempt started. In the military, there's a culture, and any veteran will tell you they witness it, regardless of the branch. You could be the best soldier in your unit one day, and then you get injured, and you're a piece of garbage the next, and you're treated as such. It's automatically assumed that you're faking it. I don't know how you fake a fractured spine, but I did hear that I was faking it, and I was just trying to get over, and you're just trying to get benefits, and so on and so forth. And I had senior leadership, actively trying to set me up to get me kicked out so I would not get benefits. And luckily, it was another colonel who stepped in. It's all in the book. He stepped in and ended up reassigning my first sergeant, and because he was trying to do things to get me into trouble, basically. Which is, if you look at my service record, no disciplinary issues whatsoever. So, right. Yeah, it was really bad. So, and this is very common though, and so that does a lot. That does a lot to you on a mental level, an emotional level, And it took the Army, the VA and the Army, 2 years to retire me. 2 years. Wow. That with a fractured spine, you'd think it would be a no-brainer, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, your spine's fractured. Okay,
so, but
took him 2 years. And
the tendency is to want to return you to duty. But 2 years seems like an awfully long time if it's obvious.
Yeah, very, very long time. And during that process, but because of that, I ended up getting the best assignment of my entire career. Because even though I was learning how to walk again, I was an intelligence analyst. So as long as I could sit at a computer and type, I could do my job. So I used my commander's open door policy, and I called him directly one day at home. And he says, "Sergeant, this better be good." I said, "Sir, it is good. I need to work." He goes, "Well, you're learning how to walk again. You can't be in the Army anymore. You're going to be retired, so on and so forth." I said, "That's fine, sir. But in the meantime, I need to do something. Please, for the love of God, can you find me something to do?" And he said, "Well, let me look into a few things." And he came back later, and he ended up getting me an assignment at Joint Task Force North, which is located right there at Fort Bliss. And that was the best assignment of my entire career. That was the assignment that every intelligence analyst would love to have, but you have to know somebody to get. So I had the distinct honor of working there while I was waiting for the retirement process to complete. And that was a great experience.
So what type of work was that?
Well, that's, without getting into classified material, the compound itself was in the middle of Fort Bliss, and it was surrounded by electrified fence and concertina wire, razor wire, and you had to have a top secret clearance just to walk up to the gate. And inside this compound, as the name would indicate, Joint Task Force North, every three-letter agency that you've ever heard of was in there, and every branch of the military was in there. All intelligence people, and we were broken down into teams, and each team had 12 to 15 people, and each team would have at least one member of every branch of the military and at least one member of every three-letter agency, all working together in teams on real-world stuff. So
Yeah.
that was a fantastic experience that I had there. And we brought down some really bad people, and they would have done so without me, I'm sure. But I got to participate, and that was a great experience. But
I've got to say, similar type things. Get to take down some really bad people. So,
yeah.
Well, we got to take another break. When we come back, I want to get into how you got on this dark path after they retired you that led you to think about taking your own life, Robert. We'll be right back with author and retired U.S. Army Staff Sergeant Robert Quells III here on the Rob Maness Show.
I'm one of 3 Vietnam veterans left in the House of Representatives, and I can tell you for a fact that our generation of young men and young women who went to Vietnam, one of the mistakes the country did, our country, was not welcome us back. Okay, we lost a significant number of good folks because they never assimilated back into society. Now, having said that, fast forward here after 2 decades, I would call a generational war in the Middle East, whether it be Iraq or Afghanistan mainly. The country didn't make that mistake twice because our veterans have been welcomed back. But in every war, the scenario is different when it comes to the toll on our human psyche. I would suggest to you one of the things that the data does tell us is that more community outreach at the local level, whether it be veteran service organizations, whether it VA clinics, different, contracted mental health capabilities, is still to a large extent untapped as far as the positive impact it can have on a veteran's life.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Truth Thursday. We're talking about veteran suicide. I don't shy away from this topic because being a veteran that's been involved in combat operations, I talk to veterans on the daily, and most of them have some type of combat experience. Many are suffering from PTSD, and some just suffer from depression. Others have just had hard times in their lives, and all of those pathways can lead to a veteran taking their own life. And my guest today is author and retired U.S. Army Staff Sergeant Robert Quells III, who wrote the book, Bobby, There's Always a Light at the End of the Tunnel, to talk about his life and what led him up to potentially, contemplating taking his own life as a veteran, and then coming out of it. And Bobby, or Robert, just prior to the break, we were talking about how it took 2 years to get you medically retired. You had this great assignment. So what happened? Because it wasn't much longer after that you got on this path that led you to contemplate taking your life.
Yeah, when I during this med board process, as they call it, with the VA and the DOD, I began thinking, okay, what's my next move? And I'm going to be medically retired. What am I going to do now? is my life over? Those thoughts start swirling in your head. Am I going to sit at home the rest of my life with nothing to do? That kind of thing. And then, as they often do, and they have throughout my life, I get these crazy ideas that when I first verbalize them, everybody thinks I've lost my mind, but then they're really surprised when I actually do it. And I came up with the idea of buying a franchise and go into business for myself when I get out from the Army. And everybody was like, well, you can't do that for this reason or that reason, blah, blah, blah. Well, I ended up buying a franchise while I was still on active duty. And I went to their headquarters while I was on medical leave in San Diego to get training so I could get the store up and running, so I could hit the ground running once I got back home to Ohio. And so I got back to Ohio. I bought a store franchise. I'm not going to say the name of the franchise, but I bought the store in my hometown, Berea. It was a pre-existing store that was kind of run down, and I turned it around. I was doing quite well. I took over this business, but with my disability, with a fractured spine, I had to do a lot of lifting of heavy items, and that didn't work well. And then I had the flag that you get when you retire from the military. I had that hanging on the back wall of the store. And then one day the corporate folks come in, and they would come in periodically to check the store to make sure it matches their floor plan, so on and so forth. It makes sense. It's a franchise. They want all the stores to look the same, and that's fine. And they weren't 5 feet in my store, and the person that was in charge looked at the flag on the back wall and said, "You have to take that flag down." I said, "Excuse me?" I said, "It's not part of our floor plan. All the stores don't have a flag. You have to take the flag down." I said, "No." I said, "I literally broke my back serving my country. I'm not taking that flag down." And long story short, they sent a salesperson I had a business in the city that was spending $3,000 a month in my store. They sent a sales representative into his office and offered him the same shipping rates that I was paying as a franchisee, effectively cutting $3,000 a month out of my pocket. This is what started the downward spiral. And my response to that was to get a nice big fat contract with the local convention center to ship their sports memorabilia that people were buying at auction and whatnot. And, people didn't want to walk around with a $100,000 baseball bat. They wanted to ship it and have it insured. So that's what they would do. And I made more money in a week at that convention center than I made in probably 4 to 6 months with the store, which more than made up for the $3,000 a month that they took. That was my way of saying, okay, knock me down, I get right back up fighting. So, and it was December, and Christmas was coming up, and I came in that day, and I logged into my bank account, expecting to see a nice large sum of money, and then I could pay my employees and give them a Christmas bonus and all that sort of thing. And the bank account was zero. Big fat zero. And of course I go into panic mode. Did somebody hack my account? Did somebody steal my credit cards? Or, what's all those thoughts are racing through your mind. And I ended up calling corporate, and because I found out that they had taken the money out of the account. And they said, "Yeah, we never authorized that thing at the convention center, so you have no right to the profits from it." Yeah. So I told my employees that I had to go for a walk, that I needed to take care of some stuff, and they had no idea what was going on. And And I put my Glock 9mm in the trunk of my car that morning because I was going to go to the range later that day because the owner of the range was a good customer of mine. He kept asking me, when are you going to come shoot at my range? So that day I was going to do that. And so I went for a walk in the park, which ended up lasting 8 hours.
Wow.
By the time it was all said and done. Yeah. I turned my phone off. I pulled the battery out of it altogether because I didn't want to be found. And I was walking, and I had, at one point during that walk, I didn't start the walk with the gun, but at one point I went back to my car and got it out of the trunk and put it in my waistband. And even at that moment when I pulled the gun out of the car, I wasn't actually thinking about using it on myself at that particular moment. And I didn't really understand why I was getting the gun at that moment in hindsight. But I put it in my waistband and kept walking. And then I found myself, now the sun's setting. You can picture this. I'm in the woods, so it's already getting dark. The sun's going down. It's setting over my left shoulder. I'm sitting on a boulder facing the river in front of me, and there was a mink or a ferret or some critter like that eating crayfish looking at me like, what in the heck are you doing here? And I put the gun to my head and started to pull the trigger, and a miracle intervened. Made me stop cold in my tracks. The trees in front of me opened and sunlight came through on my face, and I could feel heat. Okay.
Yeah.
Now think about that for a moment. The sun was setting over my left shoulder. How did the sun come through the trees in front of me? Okay.
Exactly.
And at that same exact moment, I heard Carrie Underwood singing Jesus Take the Wheel as if she was standing right in front of me. And that's what made me drop the gun. And it could have been in my head. It could have been somebody driving by in their car with the radio on. Who knows? But it doesn't matter because it made me stop. So from that point forward, I decided, yeah, I'll let him take the wheel. Please do. And I walked out and got the help that I needed. And today, it's people think once you've been down that road, there's no coming back. That's not true. You can recover from that just like you can recover from any injury or illness.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah.
So did you go to the VA?
I'm sorry.
Did you go to the VA system?
Yes. I've been working with the VA ever since. I no longer really need to go. I don't even have to take medication anymore. It's been 10 years, and I've never had another thought again of anything like that. And I've had the most crazy luck. I had a lot of crazy luck growing up, as you read about in the book, probably, with winning concert tickets and all sorts of things. But, it's funny that I ended up getting an endorsement from a 2-star general who's active duty in the United States Air Force, and he works in the Pentagon. And that happened because I played poker. Who would have thought that playing poker would help me write my book? But it did, and it's a really cool story.
We're going to talk about that after this last break. I want you to tell that story, and I want you to tell any veterans or anybody that's contemplating suicide listening to this show or that might come across it what your advice is and how you extricated yourself out of that predicament, because that was pretty tough. Robert, when your accounts are zero and you got employees to pay, it's Christmas time, unbelievable pressure there. We'll be right back on the Rob Maness Show. It's Truth Thursday. We're talking veteran suicide, how we can beat it, with author and retired U.S. Army Staff Sergeant Robert Coyle.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Is the government tracking you? Do they have access to all your data?
All right, guys.
Well, if you go to worldviewtalk.com, you'll find out about a cell phone company that, well, does not store your data. They don't do that. This is what they're known for. They don't store your data. You have privacy. You're not being tracked. That's why a lot of folks are turning to worldviewtalk.com. You'll find their prices are very competitive. All the details are there at worldviewtalk.com. Again, worldviewtalk.com. Oh, while you're there, not only do they have cell phones that aren't tracking you, you can find out about how to get a satellite phone. Should the whole system go down and you want to communicate with a family member or a loved one, you might want to have a satellite phone. Or how about their solar generators? They have great solar generators. Check them all out right now. Worldviewtalk.com, worldviewtalk.com.
Hey everybody, it's Doug Collins. Wow, first day on the job. I want to thank President Trump for nominating me to be the 12th VA Secretary. I'm here in my new office. It's like most days. You know, it's a new start. I'm learning the ropes, learning where to go, who to see, even, probably trying to find the bathroom. But there's one thing I don't have to look for, and that's my mission here. My mission is for our vets. Our mission is that the VA will be so America First focused because America First puts our veterans first. That's what you're going to get from me. You're going to see me a lot here. I'm going to keep you up to date. We're going to be transparent because our veterans deserve nothing better. And to the veterans who work at the VA and the employees at the VA, you're not going to have a better friend than me because I'm going to raise the bar, hold you accountable because we have a job to do. Mission 1, starting today, our vets.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's True Thursday. That was the brand new VA Secretary was just confirmed. That was his first action in office there within the last few days. Doug Collins, former congressman from Georgia, and also a Air Force colonel, chaplain, and a Navy veteran. So he gets it. He understands. He's served with us. He's one of us. And I'm excited to see what he's going to do with the Department of Veterans Affairs. And my guest today is author and retired U.S. Army Staff Sergeant Robert Quayle III, the author of the book, Bobby, There's Always a Light at the End of the Tunnel, who himself just talked about his path to contemplating suicide and actually right up to the point of making the attempt before he was turned around. And Bobby, tell the audience, what your experience was like as you regained a positive path. And you mentioned playing poker before we went to the break, but I suspect there's more to it than that after having read this book.
Yeah, I, growing up, one of my role models, or the role model for me, was the movie character Rocky Balboa, played by Sylvester Stallone. There's a quote from his movie where he talks about it's not about how hard you can hit, it's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. And that's how I live my life. Life is going to kick your butt. It's going to knock you down. It's going to beat you up. And it's not about what happens to you that matters as much as how you react to it. And, a year ago, January, I was just thinking about writing the book. I didn't have the first clue about how to write a book. I was just thinking about it. I just finished driving for Uber, and I play poker as a pastime. It was a hobby of mine at the time. And I live stream for the World Poker Tour once a week, and sometimes more often as I fill in for others. And so I have this community of poker players through the World Poker Tour that have become good friends. And at the time I was thinking about quitting poker because I was having a lot of bad luck and bad runs. And they encouraged me. They said, "No, man, keep playing. You're a great player. and we love having you around and all this stuff. And they were encouraging me about writing the book too, because I was talking to them about it. I started, discussing the idea with my poker buddies, and because they encouraged me to keep playing, I ended up winning a championship, a seat in a championship tournament on a poker cruise in the Caribbean. The World Poker Tour took over an entire Virgin cruise ship, and they did a cruise around the Bahamas in the Caribbean. And it was nothing but poker championship tournaments and all this stuff. And, I mentioned earlier in the broadcast about how when you look back, you see how things are supposed to happen, how serendipity steps in. This is another one of those. So I get to the crew, I get on the ship. And I'm not kidding you, I wasn't even 10 feet on board when my phone goes off with an invitation to a private party on the 16th deck. I'm like, wow, this thing has 16 decks. And then my next thought was, well, geez, they must have sent this to the wrong guy, because I'm nobody in the poker world, at least not yet anyway. So I threw my stuff in the room, and I decided I would go to this private party and let them know they invited the wrong guy. And I don't, if you're a fan of the World Poker Tour, if you watch them on TV, the host of the show is Lynn Gilmartin. She's this absolutely beautiful, redheaded Australian woman, and she's a wonderful person and a great host of the show. And I've been watching her on television for years, at least 10 years. And the elevator doors open, and guess who's standing right there? Lynn Gilmartin. And she looks at me, she goes, "Are you Bob?" And I almost passed out. I said, "What? How do you know my name?" How does Lynn Gilmartin know my name? And then she goes, "Hold on a second." She waves Jeremy over, the guy who runs the whole show. And she goes, "This is Bob Quayle." And he goes, "You're Bob Quayle?" I said, "I didn't do it. I swear to God, whatever it was, I had nothing to do." He goes, "Yes, you did. You wrote a book." I said, "How did you know about that?" Because, the cruise happened in April. I was just talking about it in January, and I actually started writing it in February, and it only took me 3 months to write this book. And it was actually, the publisher was getting it ready to print when I went on the cruise. And I actually halted production of the book to add the bonus chapter about my experience on the cruise, because it was so crazy. So I'm talking to Jeremy. He goes, "Listen, the producer wants to hear about your book." I said, "You've got to be kidding me. The producer?" He said, "Yeah, come on over." So he introduces me to the producer. I tell her about the book. She says, "Oh, wow, I want to interview you on camera about your book." I said, "Really?" She said, "Absolutely. Let's do this." So they set it up a couple of days later. They filmed me, and by the end of the interview, the producer and the sound guy were both in tears, happy tears. And she goes, "We're going to put you in a TV commercial too." I said, "What?" She goes, "Yeah, how do you feel about having a camera crew follow you around for a couple of days on the cruise?" I said, "Okay, who's punking me?" I'm looking around. Where's the hidden cameras? This has got to be a joke, right? No, she was serious. Yeah. So they had a camera crew follow me around for a few days. They filmed me playing poker. They filmed me playing pickleball. They filmed me walking on the beach. And for the close of the commercial, they had me walk up with the waves crashing behind me. They choreographed the whole thing. They had me walk up to the camera, and I paused, and I said, "So thanks to Club WPT, I've won my way into paradise, and so can you." And I pointed to it, and they're like, "That's money. We're going to use that." So they made a commercial out of it, and the sound guy told me, he says, "Listen, I want you to meet my wife. She's an author too. She likes to meet other authors." So he introduces me, and I tell her about the book, and she says, "Listen, you have to meet my son, because he's directly involved with preventing suicides in the military." And I said, "You've got to be kidding." "Really?" She said, "Yes."
Got that works in serious ways.
Yeah, it's strange, all because I play poker. So she gave me his name. She wouldn't tell me anything else about him. She said, just look him up on LinkedIn when you get home, and when you message him, tell him Mom says hi from the cruise in the Caribbean, so he knows who you are, because I'm going to tell him who you are. I was like, okay, this sounds all kind of secretive and everything, but anyway, so I looked him up, and I almost fell out of my chair. You know, he's a major general in the Air Force working in the Pentagon. I thought, oh my God, I'm not going to message this guy. The FBI is going to be at my front door. But I did get the courage up, and I messaged him, and he responded immediately, and he's been helping me ever since. He didn't help me write the book, but he's been advising me both as a military member, but as a friend and as a reader. And then about a month after, the book has only been out a couple of months, about a month after I sent him a signed copy, he sends me a message, and he says, check your Amazon reviews. And I said, oh, did I get that 1-star review every author gets? He goes, no, just check your review. So I got on Amazon, and he left a review a mile long that made me cry.
Oh,
it was such a wonderful review. And you know, when I was on active duty about 15 years, and I think I saw a general once at a distance, but that was about it. And now here I am. I'm friends with 4 of them, because this general, he introduced me to 2 retired generals who are authors themselves and best-selling authors on Amazon, no less. And then I met another general at a Folds of Honor event that I did a book signing for. And so all of this happened because I play poker, and because I was streaming live. And now the even happier ending to this whole poker story is after the cruise, I added the bonus chapter to the book, and I mentioned all the stars of the show and talked about them. And I kept playing poker throughout the year last year, and I ended up winning my way into what is referred to as the Super Bowl of the poker world. I won a seat in the Prime Championship tournament with the World Poker Tour at the Wynn in Las Vegas back in December. And I didn't just win 1 seat, I won 5 seats. 5 entries. I was the only person to do that, to win 5 seats in the same tournament, which essentially meant I could start playing, I could get knocked out, get back in, get knocked out, get back in, and 5 times, 5 chances to do something incredible. And when I got to Vegas,
Robert, we're running out of time, so I want to give you a chance to give your 2 cents worth of advice to somebody that may be contemplating suicide, whether they're a veteran or not, real quick, and then tell folks how to find the book and buy it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I could go on all day with all my stories, but yeah, for any veteran that might be thinking about taking their own life, I would say don't do it, because it will get better. There is light at the end of the tunnel. The devastation you leave behind.
Yeah.
You don't want to do that. Trust me.
Exactly.
I'm so happy. Yeah, I get emotional when I talk about it, because it affects so many people. One of the things I've learned after writing this book is that just about everybody's been affected by suicide in one way or another. Either they know somebody, a family member, and I can't say who, but a very well-known individual has told me that he himself thought about committing suicide and didn't.
Well, we got to run, Robert.
So,
folks, you can find the book on Amazon, right?
Yes, it's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and the audiobook will be coming out later this year.
Thank you so much, sir. We appreciate it. Appreciate you talking about your story. We'll promote the book too. Have a great weekend. And folks, Monday is More War Monday. We've got to have another author of a great book about an American hero. It's called Midnight in Iron Bottom Sound. It's about war in World War II, heroism in the shark-infested waters around Guadalcanal. You don't want to miss this. I'll see you then on The Rob Maness Show.